The arrogance in Rear Admiral Richard Caldwell's smile was unmistakable as he circled the metal table like a shark scenting blood. The fluorescent lights of the FBI interrogation room in Chicago cast harsh shadows across his weathered face, highlighting decades of sun exposure from naval deployments. His precisely pressed uniform bore the telltale trident insignia of the Navy SEALs, America's elite maritime special operations force. Across from him sat Sarah Mitchell, 16 years old with chipped black nail polish and defiance burning in her green eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her oversized gray MIT sweatshirt a shield against the deliberately cold temperature of the room. The digital clock on the wall displayed October 17, 2023, marking 5 hours since her arrest. "Let's be perfectly clear about what you did," Caldwell said, his voice carrying that particular tone of condescension reserved for those he deemed beneath him. "You infiltrated secure nav SpecWarcom servers using an advanced encryption bypass. You accessed classified DevGru files, and you attempted to download personnel records with the highest security clearance in the naval special warfare community." He slapped a red folder marked classified onto the metal table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "That's a federal offense punishable by up to 20 years in prison, Miss Mitchell." Special Agent Victor Reynolds, 45, with a crew cut and a coffee stain on his navy blue tie, stood silently by the door. His presence was intimidating, by design arms crossed, face expressionless. The classic good cop, bad cop routine, though neither had shown much good yet. Sarah's fingers tapped an anxious rhythm against the edge of the table. "I told you already I was looking for information about my mother." This caught the attention of Special Agent Jessica Alvarez, 38, the only woman in the room. She glanced up from her tablet, where she'd been silently taking notes, a flicker of interest crossing her face. "Your mother," Caldwell repeated with theatrical skepticism, exchanging knowing glances with Reynolds. "The woman who abandoned you and your father 5 years ago." Sarah's jaw tightened. "She didn't abandon us. She was deployed." "Deployed," Caldwell echoed, nodding as if humoring a child. "With what unit exactly?" Sarah hesitated, knowing what would follow, but pushed forward anyway. "She was part of a classified naval special warfare team. She was a SEAL." The silence lasted precisely 3 seconds before Caldwell's laughter filled the room. It wasn't genuine amusement, but the calculated mockery of a man accustomed to wielding power. He turned to Reynolds and motioned him closer. "Reynolds, you've got to hear this. Our teenage hacker claims her mother was a Navy SEAL." Reynolds dutifully chuckled. "Someone's been watching too many Hollywood movies." Caldwell's face transformed into a mask of patronizing pity. "Young lady, in the 244-year history of naval special warfare, not a single woman has completed BUD-S training or earned a trident. That's not an opinion. That's fact." He tapped the screen on the wall, bringing up a classified mission brief. The timestamp read, "Mogadishu, U.S. Embassy, 2019. Images of tactical operations flashed across the screen. "These are real SEALs. These are RAW operations. This isn't some fantasy world where your mother played soldier." Sarah's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. 5 years of whispers in school hallways. 5 years watching her father, once a brilliant MIT physics professor, spiral into depression and alcoholism. 5 years defending her mother against rumors that she'd run off with another man. "You don't understand," Sarah said, her voice was quiet but steady. "My mother served in ways you don't have clearance to know about." This earned another round of condescending laughter. Caldwell leaned across the table, invading her personal space. "I've been a SEAL for 29 years, young lady. I've commanded Team 6 operations in 14 countries. There is nothing about naval special warfare that I don't know." He turned to the screen again, typing commands that brought up new images, training courses, obstacle fields, and men struggling through mud. "This is BUD's basic underwater demolition, our SEAL training. The most demanding military training in the world. Over 80% of candidates fail. Your mother never went through this. It's physically impossible for most women to complete." Sarah raised her eyes to meet his. "Did you ever hear of the Athena Protocol?" Something flickered across Caldwell's face, so brief that most would miss it. But Sarah had been trained by her mother to notice micro-expressions, and what she saw wasn't confusion. It was recognition quickly masked. Alvarez glanced up sharply from her tablet, eyes narrowing slightly. "Another fantasy," Caldwell said, but the mockery in his voice had diminished fractionally. You're digging yourself deeper with these conspiracy theories. He gestured to the screen again, which now displayed Sarah's digital footprint. You used a sophisticated Tango 7 decryption package to access DevGru servers. Where did you learn that? Who helped you? Sarah remained silent, remembering her mother's lessons. When interrogated, control what information you give. Make them work for every piece. You connected with known members of the Phantom Cell Hacker Collective. Caldwell continued, frustration edging into his voice. Are you working with foreign intelligence? I was looking for my mother, Sarah repeated. Catherine Mitchell, service number 8547-9211 KMT. The military service number, which shouldn't exist in any public database, caused Caldwell to freeze momentarily. His eyes darted to Reynolds, who straightened from his position against the wall. Alvarez typed something rapidly into her tablet. Where did you get that number? Caldwell demanded, his composure cracking slightly. Sarah felt a small surge of validation. My mother gave it to me. Caldwell recovered quickly, his face hardening. Your mother abandoned you and your father. The psychological impact is well documented in your school records. Creating this fantasy doesn't change reality. The words struck like physical blows. Sarah bit her lip, fighting back tears. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I'm not lying, she whispered. Caldwell ignored her, returning to his seat and opening another folder. Let's focus on the actual crimes committed here. Your little fantasy life isn't relevant to this investigation. For a brief moment, Sarah's eyes met Alvarez's. The female agent didn't look away immediately, and something like doubt or perhaps recognition crossed her face before she returned her attention to her tablet. On September 15th, you used the MIT computer lab to access a proxy server in Belarus. Caldwell continued, from there you attempted to breach the Naval Special Warfare Personnel database. When that failed, you connected with the Phantom Cell Collective to request assistance. Do you deny these actions? No, Sarah admitted quietly, but I wasn't trying to do anything wrong. I just wanted to know if she was alive. This seemed to catch Alvarez's attention. Your mother is listed as active duty Navy in basic records, she said, speaking for the first time in nearly an hour. Her voice carried a slight Texas accent. Records confirm she's alive. Basic records don't show where she is, Sarah countered, or why she hasn't contacted us in 5 years, or why her last letter came from a naval station that doesn't exist when you search for it. More conspiracy theories, Caldwell interrupted, but his eyes betrayed heightened interest. Your mother is probably stationed on a ship somewhere, drinking with sailors and forgetting she ever had a family. The casual cruelty hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had endured 5 years of not knowing, of watching her father spiral into depression, of defending her mother to classmates who whispered she had run off with another man. My mother is a hero, Sarah said, her voice stronger despite the tears threatening to spill. She serves in ways you couldn't even comprehend. Watch your tone, young lady, Caldwell warned. You're already in serious trouble. Adding disrespect to a federal officer won't help your situation. Is it disrespect to tell the truth? Sarah shot back. Reynolds chuckled from his position by the door. The truth about your mother, the female Navy SEAL kid. There's never been a female Navy SEAL in the history of the United States military. That's not opinion, that's fact. Maybe in the official records, Sarah muttered. Caldwell leaned forward, his patience visibly thinning. Let me make something very clear. You're 16 years old, caught attempting to hack classified government databases. The only reason you're not already being processed for juvenile detention is that we're still assessing whether to charge you as an adult, given the nature of the crime. Sarah's stomach dropped. Juvenile detention. Adult charges. She had never considered those possibilities when she began her search. The interrogation intensified over the next 40 minutes, with Caldwell using Sarah's fabrication about her mother to undermine everything else she said. Each denial was met with a condescending smile, each explanation dismissed before she could finish articulating it. Maybe we should have you psychologically evaluated before continuing, he threatened, clearly enjoying the power dynamic. Father with depression, mother abandonment issues, pathological lying. You're building quite the profile. Sarah stared at the table, exhausted and dehydrated. They had given her 1 cup of water 3 hours ago, and her throat felt painfully dry. The room seemed to be getting smaller with each passing minute. Suddenly, Alvarez's phone buzzed. Her expression changed as she read the message. color draining from her face. She stood abruptly and whispered something to Caldwell, who dismissed her with an irritated wave. "Sir, I really think," Alvarez tried again, her voice carrying unexpected urgency. "Not now," Caldwell snapped, turning back to Sarah. "Where were we?" "Ah, yes, your mother, the Navy SEAL. Tell me more about this fantasy." Sarah had stopped responding, tears silently streaming down her face. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking 3 hours and 20 minutes since she had been brought into this room. Alvarez exited briefly. Through the window, Sarah could see her speaking urgently with someone in the hallway, someone whose face she couldn't see. The conversation looked intense, Alvarez's normally composed demeanor replaced by something that looked remarkably like fear. Commotion began outside, raised voices, radio chatter, the sound of heavy boots in the hallway. Caldwell focused on breaking, Thwerdum ignored it all. "Your mother isn't a hero," he said, leaning across the table. "She's just gone, and making up stories won't bring her back." The door opened. Alvarez stepped in, her face pale. "Sir, you need to stop now." "I told you, I'm not finished." "They're here." "Who's here?" Caldwell demanded, irritation evident. Alvarez swallowed hard. "Naval Special Warfare Command. They've ordered immediate cessation of this interrogation." Before Caldwell could respond, the door swung fully open. The sound of a metal hand gripping the doorframe preceded the entrance of a towering figure, a man in his 70s with steel-gray hair, cut military short, wearing a perfectly pressed naval uniform, adorned with enough ribbons and medals to chronicle decades of American military history. Rear Admiral Wallace Harrington stood with the unmistakable bearing of a man who had commanded respect for half a century. His left arm ended in a prosthetic hand, a memento from a forgotten jungle firefight in Vietnam. His weathered face bore the marks of a lifetime in combat zones, from the Mekong Delta to the mountains of Afghanistan. Behind him stood two naval officers in dress blues, their posture rigid, their expressions unreadable. Most striking of all was the red folder clutched in Harrington's right hand, bearing a classification marking Sarah had never seen before. Scorpion clearance, presidential eyes only. Caldwell's face transitioned through confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror as he recognized the legendary figure. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "Admiral Harrington," he stammered, snapping to attention. "Sir, I wasn't informed you would be—" "At ease, Caldwell," Harrington said, his voice carrying the graveled quality of someone who had shouted orders through gunfire and sandstorms. He turned his attention to Sarah, his piercing blue eyes taking in her tear-streaked face and defensive posture. "Miss Mitchell," he said with unexpected gentleness, "I apologize for what you've endured today." The shift in the room's power dynamic was immediate and total. Reynolds straightened to attention against the wall. Alvarez appeared visibly relieved. And Caldwell, the man who had spent hours mocking and berating Sarah, looked as though he'd seen a ghost. Admiral Caldwell attempted again. "We were conducting a routine interrogation of a suspect who breached NAV-Spec Warcom security protocols. Standard procedure for—" "There's nothing standard about this, Caldwell," Harrington interrupted, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. "You've been interrogating the daughter of a Tier 1 operator without parental consent about classified information she could not possibly possess." He placed the red folder on the table. "Unless someone gave it to her." Caldwell's expression shifted subtly, a tightening around the eyes, a slight clench of the jaw. Signs of someone calculating rapidly. "Sir, with all due respect, I'm not aware of any female Tier 1 operators in naval special warfare. The girl claims her mother is a SEAL, which is demonstrably false." Harrington's weathered face remained impassive, but his eyes hardened. "Is that so?" He turned to one of the officers behind him. "Commander Wilson, please secure the room." The younger officer nodded and moved to the computer terminal, typing a series of commands that caused the screens to go dark. The red security lights above the door changed from steady to pulsing, indicating a secure communications lockdown. 16 years ago, Harrington said, addressing the room but keeping his eyes on Sarah, "I was Deputy Director of Naval Special Warfare Development and Group, what the public calls SEAL Team 6. Sarah straightened in her chair, hanging on every word. "During that time, we recognized a critical vulnerability in our special operations capability, particularly in regions where cultural and religious restrictions limited our male operators' effectiveness." He turned to Caldwell. "You remember April 1980, Caldwell Operation Eagle Claw?" Caldwell nodded stiffly. The Iran hostage rescue mission. 8 servicemen died when a helicopter collided with a transport aircraft during the desert abort. A catastrophic failure, Harrington confirmed. But one of the less publicized problems we encountered was intelligence gathering. Our male operatives couldn't access certain areas or speak with female sources in traditional Islamic environments. He placed his prosthetic hand on the table, the metal fingers reflecting the fluorescent light. In 1982, under President Reagan, we initiated a classified program to address this gap. A program so secret that fewer than 30 people in government knew of its existence. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. We called it the Athena Protocol. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Vindication flooded through her. The words she had insisted were true for 5 years now, confirmed by one of the most decorated naval commanders in American history. Caldwell's face had gone pale. "Sir, I've never heard of such a program." "That was by design, Caldwell," Harrington replied coldly. "The existence of female special operators with Tier 1 capability was classified above your pay grade, far above it." A senior official in a crisp suit stepped forward from behind Harrington, introducing himself with quiet authority. "Deputy Director Benjamin Kramer, Central Intelligence Agency." The Athena Protocol was a joint Navy-CIA initiative operating under special presidential authority. Kramer was in his mid-60s with salt and pepper hair and the unmistakable bearing of someone who had spent decades navigating Washington's corridors of power. His voice was measured precise, the voice of someone accustomed to being listened to. The operator selected for Athena underwent modified Bodhi-des training at a facility known as Site Echo in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a location that exists on no maps and in no official records. Kramer's eyes narrowed as he studied Caldwell, which makes me very curious how this young woman knew about it. Sarah stared at Harrington, the man who had just confirmed everything she had been claiming. "My mother," she said softly. "Catherine Mitchell." Harrington nodded, his expression softening slightly. "Lieutenant Commander Catherine Mitchell, one of our finest operators, team leader for Athena Strike Group since 2018. Sarah felt tears welling again, but this time from vindication rather than despair. "She didn't abandon us." "No, Miss Mitchell, she did not," Harrington confirmed. He turned to Caldwell, his expression hardening once more. "Which makes me question why an officer of your experience would repeatedly insist otherwise during an interrogation." Caldwell's composure was visibly cracking. "Sir, I had no knowledge of this program. I was following protocol for a security breach." "By telling a 16-year-old girl that her mother was a deserter," Harrington's voice carried a dangerous edge. "By psychologically manipulating a minor without legal representation or parental consent." The room fell silent. Even Reynolds looked uncomfortable, now shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Harrington turned back to Sarah. "Your mother spoke of you often, Miss Mitchell. She was particularly proud of your aptitude for computers, though I suspect she never anticipated you'd use those skills to hack into DevGru databases." A hint of a smile touched Sarah's lips, despite her exhaustion. "She taught me to be resourceful." "Indeed she did," Harrington agreed, "though perhaps with some oversight next time." Alvarez stepped forward. "Sir, should I arrange for Miss Mitchell's father to be notified?" A shadow crossed Harrington's face. "Professor Robert Mitchell has been informed and is en route. However, there are complications we need to discuss." He turned to Caldwell and Reynolds. "In private, you two are dismissed." Caldwell stiffened. "Admiral, as the senior Nav Spec Warcom representative on site, I should be included in any That wasn't a request, Caldwell," Harrington cut him off. "You're dismissed. Report to Captain Lennox for debriefing." The tension between the two men was palpable. For a moment it seemed Caldwell might protest further, but military discipline prevailed. He offered a stiff salute, which Harrington returned with minimal acknowledgement. As Caldwell and Reynolds exited, Sarah noticed something odd, Caldwell's hand briefly touching his pocket, followed by a subtle nod to someone outside the room's window. The gesture triggered a memory of her mother's teachings: watch for nonverbal communications. They often reveal more than words. When the door closed, Harrington sighed heavily, lowering himself into the chair Caldwell had vacated. Up close, Sarah could see the exhaustion etched into his features. Not just physical fatigue, but the deeper weariness that comes from decades of difficult decisions and their consequences. "Miss Mitchell," he began, his tone gentler than before, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be authorized to share this information with a civilian regardless of family connections. Sarah nodded, recognizing the gravity of the moment. But these are not normal circumstances. Kramer interjected, placing a secure tablet on the table. In the past 14 months, 7 members of the original Athena team have been killed. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Killed to precision operations, Harrington explained grimly. Professional hits disguised as accidents or robberies gone wrong. Jakarta, Johannesburg, Toronto, Barcelona. Each operator was in deep cover living civilian lives. Their identities, should have been impossible to trace. Yet someone found them, Kramer continued. Someone with access to classified personnel files, the same files you were attempting to access. The implication struck Sarah with terrible clarity. You think I'm connected to the killings? No, Harrington said firmly. We think you were looking for your mother for exactly the reasons you stated. What concerns us is how you knew where to look. He leaned forward, his prosthetic hand making a soft metallic sound against the table. Miss Mitchell, who told you about the Athena protocol. Sarah hesitated, memories flooding back her mother in the kitchen 5 years ago, the night before she disappeared. Catherine Mitchell cleaning a disassembled Sig Sauer P-26, her hands moving with practiced precision, even as she helped Sarah with algebra homework. My mother, Sarah finally answered, the night before she left. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should look for Athena and Captain Marcus Reed. She made me memorize her service number and told me never to speak of it unless absolutely necessary. Kramer and Harrington exchanged significant glances. Captain Marcus Reed doesn't exist, Kramer said carefully. It's a code designation for a secure communication protocol. Sarah processed this information. She knew something was going to happen. We believe so, Harrington confirmed. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell was investigating a security breach within the program. Shortly after she went dark protocol for operators who believe their cover may be compromised. 5 years ago, Sarah whispered. She's been in hiding for 5 years. Not exactly hiding, Harrington corrected. She's been operating under deep cover attempting to identify the source of the breach. Until 3 months ago, when the killings began. The realization struck Sarah like a physical blow. Her mother hadn't abandoned them. She'd been protecting them, staying away to keep her family safe from whatever threat she'd uncovered. Before Sarah could respond, Alvarez's phone buzzed again. She checked it, her expression darkening. Sir, we have a situation. Building security has detected unauthorized access to the secure server room on level B3. Harrington tensed. When 4 minutes ago, security cameras in that sector just went offline. Kramer moved swiftly to the door. We need to move the girl. Now. What's happening? Sarah asked, anxiety rising. Harrington stood, his demeanor shifting from administrative to tactical. In an instant, the transformation of a man who had commanded special operations for decades. Miss Mitchell, stay close to Agent Alvarez, he ordered. We're relocating to a secure facility. As they moved toward the door, the building's alarm system suddenly activated, a pulsing wail, accompanied by flashing lights in the corridor outside. We've got breach on multiple levels, Alvarez reported, checking her tactical display. Armed intruders, at least 8, moving up from the parking structure. Harrington drew a compact sidearm from beneath his uniform jacket, a SEAL's instinct never fully fading despite his administrative role. Kramer, secure our transportation. Alvarez, stay with the girl. Wilson with me. As the group moved swiftly down the corridor, Sarah's thoughts raced. After 5 years of defending her mother's memory, of insisting on a truth no one believed, vindication had come, but with it danger she hadn't anticipated. They reached a security door leading to a back stairwell when the first sounds of gunfire echoed from below, sharp professional 3-round bursts rather than panicked spraying. Whoever was coming knew exactly what they were doing. Harrington gestured them through the door, then paused, his experienced eyes scanning the corridor behind them. His expression changed subtly, a tightening around the eyes that Sarah's mother had taught her to recognize as the look of a warrior making a difficult tactical decision. Change of plans, he said, his voice calm despite the escalating situation. Wilson, take point with Kramer. Get our package to Safe House Echo. The younger officer nodded sharply, understanding the unspoken message in Harrington's tone. As they descended the stairs, Sarah heard Harrington speaking quietly into his secure radio. Checkmate, actual, this is Rook. We have a Thanatos situation. I repeat, Thanatos is active. The coded message meant nothing to Sarah, but the grave expressions it elicited from the others told her everything she needed to know. Whatever was happening was far worse than a simple security breach. They reached a service corridor that led to a parking area separate from the main garage. Two black SUVs with government plates waited engines running. As they approached, Sarah noticed the drivers, men with the unmistakable bearing of special operators' hands, resting near concealed weapons. Admiral, one nodded to Harrington. Situation. Hot exfil, primary package +3, possible compromise of Foxhound protocols. The driver's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. He opened the rear door, gesturing for Sarah to enter. As she climbed in, Sarah heard the distinctive sound of a helicopter approaching, the rhythmic thump of rotor blades growing louder. Is that our extraction? She asked Alvarez, who had entered behind her. The agent shook her head. Not ours. Harrington entered last, slamming the door. Go, sir, he ordered the driver. Protocol 7. The SUV accelerated sharply, tires squealing as it navigated the narrow exit ramp. Through the rear window, Sarah caught a glimpse of black-clad figures entering the parking area. They had just left, professional operators moving with tactical precision. Sir, Alvarez said to Harrington, her voice tight with tension. Building security reports Caldwell is missing. Harrington's weathered face revealed nothing but his artificial hand clenched with an audible mechanical whir. When we're secure, I want every system he accessed in the last 72 hours flagged and isolated, he ordered. And contact Norfolk. Tell them to initiate Phantom Protocol immediately. As the SUV sped through Chicago's streets, sirens wailing to clear traffic, Sarah's mind raced with implications. Her mother hadn't abandoned them. She'd been protecting them from a threat that had now found Sarah instead. The vehicle made a sharp turn onto Lakeshore Drive, the morning sun glinting off Lake Michigan's surface, a beautiful day that belied the danger surrounding them. Admiral, Sarah said quietly, my mother is alive, isn't she? Harrington's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, eyes that had seen wars across 5 decades that had made life-and-death decisions affecting thousands. Yes, Miss Mitchell, and if we're very lucky, you'll be seeing her soon. The helicopter appeared in the sky behind them, black against the blue morning, no markings, no identification. Just like the men who had entered the FBI building. But first, Harrington added grimly, we need to survive the next hour. The SUV accelerated, pushing Sarah back into her seat as they raced toward an uncertain rendezvous, carrying her closer to the mother she had defended for 5 long years and into the heart of a conspiracy that had remained hidden for decades. The truth she had insisted upon had been confirmed, but the vindication came with a price she hadn't anticipated. As the city blurred past the windows, Sarah realized her mother's world, the world of shadows and secrets, was now her own. The convoy of black SUVs tore through the outskirts of Chicago, weaving through traffic with the precision of drivers trained in evasive maneuvers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the highway as they headed west away from the city and the pursuing helicopter that had mysteriously disappeared from their tail 10 minutes into their escape. In the lead vehicle, Sarah Mitchell sat silently between Agent Alvarez and Admiral Harrington, her mind racing to process the revelations of the past hour. The teenager's fingers nervously twisted the frayed edge of her MIT sweatshirt, a gift from her father, now a painful reminder of the life thrown into chaos. They'll be tracking all known FBI evacuation routes, Harrington said, breaking the tense silence. His weathered face reflected decades of similar, high-stakes operations lines etched by years of command decisions where lives hung in the balance. Wilson, take us off grid. Protocol Echo 7. The driver nodded, executing a series of rapid turns onto progressively smaller roads. No one spoke as they navigated through industrial areas and eventually onto a rural route flanked by autumn-colored trees. The tactical silence allowed Sarah to sort through the fragments of information, assembling them like the puzzle boxes her mother used to challenge her with as a child. Catherine Mitchell hadn't abandoned them. She was alive, a covert operator in a classified program so secret that its very existence was denied by the highest levels of military command. Admiral, Sarah finally said, her voice smaller than she intended. What's Thanatos? The question landed like a stone in still water. Harrington exchanged glances with Kramer, a silent conversation between men who had spent decades in the shadows of national security. Not what, Harrington finally answered. Who? His artificial hand made a soft mechanical sound as he flexed the fingers. Thanatos is our code name for a high-level insider threat, someone with access to our most classified programs who's been compromised. Caldwell, Sarah whispered, recalling the way the SEAL commander had reacted to the mention of Athena. We've had suspicions, Alvarez cautioned, but until today, no conclusive evidence. Kramer leaned forward, his face grave. What we do know is that someone has been systematically hunting down members of the original Athena team. 7 operators killed in the past 14 months, each one made to look like accidents or random violence. Professional wet work, Harrington added, the kind that requires knowledge of our protocols, safe houses, and extraction plans. The SUV turned onto a private airfield where a Gulfstream jet waited, engines already spooling up. As they approached, Sarah noticed armed personnel taking defensive positions around the perimeter men with the unmistakable bearing of special operators. "Where are we going?" she asked as they hurried toward the aircraft. "Somewhere secure," Harrington replied. "Somewhere Thanatos won't expect." Once aboard, the jet taxied immediately, security protocols taking precedence over standard departure procedures. Inside the aircraft was configured not for luxury, but operational efficiency, communications equipment, secure workstations, and medical supplies replacing the standard executive amenities. As they climbed to cruising altitude, Kramer activated a secure communications terminal. "We need to bring her up to speed," he said to Harrington. "She's involved now, whether we like it or not." The Admiral nodded grimly. "Better she understands what we're facing." He turned to Sarah, his demeanor softening slightly. "Miss Mitchell, what I'm about to share with you would normally require multiple security clearances and years of compartmentalized access. Given the circumstances, we don't have that luxury." Sarah straightened, recognizing the gravity of the moment. In 1980, Operation Eagle Claw failed catastrophically in the Iranian desert. Harrington began, his voice taking on the cadence of a man who had told this story before, but only in classified briefing rooms. 8 servicemen died and 52 American hostages remained in captivity. The aftermath led to the creation of the United States Special Operations Command and a fundamental restructuring of our special warfare capabilities. He pulled up a secure tablet displaying declassified images of the desert disaster. But there was another lesson learned, one that never made it into official reports. Our male operators couldn't access critical intelligence in traditional Islamic societies. Women couldn't be approached. Certain areas were off limits. Cultural barriers created blind spots that compromised the entire mission. Kramer picked up the narrative. In 1982, under President Reagan's direct authorization, the CIA and Naval Special Warfare Command initiated a classified program to address this vulnerability. We recruited a small group of exceptional women, many already serving in military intelligence or other specialized roles, and began training them in a modified version of BUDS. "Modified how?" Sarah asked. "The core elements remain the same," Harrington explained. "Physical conditioning, tactical training, underwater operations. But with adaptations for female physiology and specialized focus on the unique requirements of their mission, profile deep cover infiltration, cultural immersion, extended isolated operations." "The program was called Athena," Kramer continued, "named after the Greek goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. These women became our eyes and ears in places where traditional operators couldn't go. They gathered intelligence, established networks, and occasionally, when necessary, conducted direct action operations." Alvarez, who had been monitoring communications, looked up. "Sir, we have confirmation that Captain Ellis has secured the site. ETA 30 minutes. Harrington nodded acknowledgement before returning his attention to Sarah. "Your mother was part of the second generation of Athena operators recruited in 2005. By 2012, she had become one of our most effective field assets, operating in regions where American military presence was problematic." "Is that why she disappeared?" Sarah asked the question that had haunted her for 5 years, finally finding voice. "Some mission went wrong." A shadow crossed Harrington's face. "Not exactly." He exchanged glances with Kramer again. "In 2018, your mother uncovered evidence of a security breach within the program. Someone was accessing classified personnel files, the same files you were attempting to reach. 3 days after reporting her suspicions," Kramer added, "an attempt was made on her life in Norfolk. Professional hit team, 4 operators with military training. She neutralized the threat but recognized the tactical signatures. These weren't ordinary assassins." They knew how to hunt someone with her training, Harrington said quietly, which meant they had inside knowledge of Athena protocols. The realization hit Sarah with crushing force. She went dark to protect us. She thought they might target her family. She was right, Alvarez confirmed, showing Sarah a tablet displaying surveillance photos. These were taken outside your home in Cambridge 2 weeks after she disappeared. Known associates of several hostile intelligence services. Sarah stared at the images of men watching her childhood home, strangers who had been hunting her mother, monitoring her father, potentially targeting her. 5 years of resentment and confusion began to transform into understanding. She couldn't even warn us, Sarah whispered. Any contact would have endangered you further, Harrington confirmed. She made the hardest choice an operator can make, sacrificing her own happiness to protect the people she loved. The aircraft began its descent, banking toward a mountainous region shrouded in morning mist. Through the window, Sarah could see the ancient ridge lines of the Blue Ridge Mountains, a landscape carved by time, sheltering secrets in its valleys and forests. We're approaching Site Echo, Harrington explained, the original training facility for the Athena program. It's been officially decommissioned since 1997, which makes it ideal for our purposes. No electronic footprint, Kramer added. No official record of its continued use. And the only people who know about it are either in this aircraft or waiting for us on the ground. Or hunting us, Sarah observed quietly. Harrington's expression confirmed her assessment. Precisely. The Gulfstream touched down on a runway that appeared more suited for small aircraft than a business jet, a testament to the pilot's skill. As they taxied toward a cluster of weathered buildings partially concealed by the surrounding forest, Sarah noticed defensive positions manned by operators in tactical gear, men and women whose vigilance suggested they understood the stakes. As they disembarked, a tall black man in his mid-60s approached. Despite his age, he moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had spent decades honing his body as a weapon. His close-cropped hair was almost entirely white, contrasting with skin darkened by years of exposure to unforgiving environments around the world. Most striking were his eyes, alert, assessing, missing nothing. Admiral, he greeted Harrington with a nod that conveyed both respect and familiarity. Compound is secure, perimeter sensors are active, and we've got overwatch on all approach vectors. Thank you, Marcus, Harrington replied. Miss Mitchell, this is Master Chief Marcus Coleman, one of the original Bud ES instructors for the Athena program. Coleman turned his attention to Sarah, his expression softening slightly. You look just like your mother, he said. Same eyes, same way of taking everything in. Sarah felt an unexpected surge of emotion at this connection to her absent parent. You knew her well. Trained her myself, Coleman confirmed. One of the finest operators I've ever worked with, and I've trained 3 generations of SEALs. He led them toward the main building, a sturdy structure that had once been a hunting lodge before being repurposed for military use. Inside the facility presented a curious blend of rustic architecture and advanced technology. Contemporary communications equipment and tactical displays contrasted with the log walls and stone fireplace. Command center is operational, Coleman reported. Secure communications established with JSOC and Langley. We're off the grid but not out of the fight. Harrington nodded approval. Status of Ghost 6. En route, ETA 3 hours. Coleman's eye flickered towards Sarah. She'll want to see her daughter immediately. The simple statement sent a jolt through Sarah's system. Her mother was coming here, the woman she had defended and doubted and missed for 5 interminable years. Ghost 6, she asked, voice unsteady. The designation for your mother's team, Kramer explained. 4 operators, deep cover specialists. They've been tracking the source of the security breach since the first Athena operator was killed in Jakarta last year. Coleman led them deeper into the facility, passing rooms equipped for tactical planning, medical treatment, and secure communications. The facility had the quiet efficiency of a place designed by people who understood that in their profession, overlooking details could be fatal. They entered a briefing room where wall-mounted screens displayed global tracking data, personnel files, and incident reports. One screen showed a world map with 7 red markers spread across 4 continents. The fallen, Coleman said, noticing Sarah's attention. Jakarta, Barcelona, Toronto, Cape Town, Dubai, Santiago, and Oslo. Each operator eliminated within the past 14 months. All made to look like accidents or random violence, Alvarez added. Jakarta was staged as a home invasion. Barcelona appeared to be a terrorist attack. Toronto looked like a carjacking gone wrong. But the pattern was clear to those who knew what to look for, Kramer said grimly. Each victim was one of the original Athena operators' women who had served in the program's earliest years and subsequently returned to civilian life. Why target retired operators, Sarah asked, if they're no longer active? Because they knew something, Harrington replied. Something that makes them dangerous to someone with considerable resources and reach. Harrington nodded. We believe whoever is hunting them is connected to an operation conducted in 1989, the last mission where all these women served together. Operation Cerberus, Coleman elaborated, a deep cover infiltration of a Soviet bioweapons facility in Kazakhstan. Official records state the mission was to gather intelligence on Soviet biological warfare programs. But there was more to it than that. Kramer approached a secure terminal, entering a complex authorization code. The screen shifted to display heavily redacted documents bearing the highest classification markings. What they discovered went beyond biological weapons, he continued. They uncovered evidence of a clandestine network within Soviet intelligence officers who were setting up independent operations preparing for the Soviet Union's collapse by positioning themselves to profit from the chaos that would follow. Sarah processed this information, connecting dots with the analytical mind her father had helped cultivate. You think one of these people is behind the killings? But why now after all these years? Because something changed, Coleman said. Something made these women dangerous again after decades of silence. Before anyone could elaborate, an alarm sounded, not the blaring warning of immediate threat, but a measured tone indicating incoming communication on secured channels. Incoming transmission from Ghost 6, reported a communications specialist. Authentication protocols verified. Harrington moved swiftly to the communications terminal. Put them through. The central screen flickered, then displayed a video feed from what appeared to be a military aircraft. The image quality was degraded by encryption, but clear enough to reveal a woman in her late 40s wearing tactical gear, bearing no insignia or identification. Her dark hair was cut in a practical shoulder-length style, streaked with premature gray. A healing scar ran along her left jawline. Despite the changes wrought by 5 years and obvious combat stress, Sarah recognized her immediately. Mom, she whispered, the word catching in her throat. Catherine Mitchell's eyes widened as she saw her daughter on the video feed. For a brief moment, the hardened special operator's composure cracked, revealing the mother beneath. She said, her voice steady but threaded with emotion. Are you all right? I'm fine. Sarah managed 1,000 questions competing for priority. You're alive. You're really alive. I am, Catherine confirmed, and I'm so sorry for what you've been through. Her eyes shifted to Harrington. Admiral, we have a situation. Black talent operatives intercepted us over West Virginia. We've diverted to secondary extraction point. Casualties? Harrington asked, immediately shifting back to operational focus. Negative, but they knew our flight path, sir. Primary protocols were compromised. The implications hung heavy in the air. Someone with knowledge of their most secure evacuation procedures had betrayed them. Understood, Harrington replied. Proceed to extraction point Delta. We'll dispatch ground support. Sir, Catherine continued, her expression grave. We've identified the source of the leak. It's worse than we thought. She hesitated, glancing at Sarah. Is this channel secure for all levels? Harrington understood her concern. Miss Mitchell has been briefed on Athena, but not on Cerberus details. Catherine nodded. We need to discuss the Siberia contingency when I arrive. Her eyes returned to Sarah, softening momentarily. I'll see you soon, sweetheart. Stay safe. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at the blank screen. 5 years of absence condensed into a 30-second exchange, professional, restrained yet charged with unspoken emotion. She looks different, Sarah said quietly. 5 years of deep cover operations will do that, Coleman observed. The fact that she's alive at all speaks to her extraordinary capabilities. Harrington turned to Kramer. We need to accelerate the timeline. If they've compromised our primary protocols, we have to assume Site Echo won't remain secure for long. Agreed, Kramer replied. I'll contact Langley, request additional assets. As they discussed tactical options, Sarah noticed a flashing indicator on one of the peripheral screens, a security alert from the FBI Chicago office they had fled hours on earlier. She moved closer, intelligence-gathering instincts her mother had instilled years ago kicking in. The alert detailed an unauthorized access to the FBI's secure server or room precisely when they had been evacuating the building. But what caught Sarah's attention was a partial screenshot from security footage. Though blurry, she could make out a familiar figure entering a restricted area. Rear Admiral Richard Caldwell. "Admiral," she called out, pointing to the screen. "Look." Harrington moved swiftly to her side, eyes narrowing as he processed the information. "When was this captured?" "Timestamp shows it was during our evacuation." Alvarez confirmed, joining them. "He accessed the secure server room for 3 minutes before security protocols were breached." "He's deleting evidence," Kramer concluded, "covering his tracks." "Or accessing something specific," Sarah suggested, remembering her mother's lessons about cyber intelligence. "Something he needed before going dark." Coleman's expression darkened. "Ghost protocol files." The room fell silent as the implications settled. Ghost protocol. The classified procedures for protecting operators whose identities had been compromised would contain the safehouse locations, emergency contacts, and extraction procedures for every Athena operative still alive. "If Caldwell is our insider," Harrington said gravely, "then he now has access to every contingency plan we've established for Catherine and her team." "We need to warn her," Sarah insisted. "Communications blackout is standard procedure after contact with hostile forces," Coleman explained. "She won't risk transmitting it again until she reaches the extraction point." Frustration and fear battled within Sarah. After 5 years, her mother was alive and coming home only to be heading into what might be a trap. "There has to be something we can do," she insisted. Harrington studied her for a moment, recognizing the same determination he had seen in Catherine Mitchell decades earlier. "There is," he finally said, "but it requires capabilities we don't have here." He turned to Coleman. "The Siberia contingency, is it still viable?" Coleman's expression revealed his surprise. "It hasn't been updated since 1991. Most of the infrastructure would be obsolete." "But the principle remains sound," Harrington countered. "A secondary communication network completely disconnected from official channels." Understanding dawned in Sarah's eyes. "My father," she said. "That's why my mother mentioned him before she disappeared. He helped design something." Harrington nodded. Professor Robert Mitchell was a consultant on several classified communications projects in the early 2000s. He developed a quantum encryption protocol that became the foundation for Athena's secure communications. "If Caldwell is accessing Ghost Protocol," Kramer mused, "he'll be focused on official channels and recognized safe houses. A completely separate network might give us an advantage." "Where's my father now?" Sarah asked. "En route to a safe house in Arlington," Alvarez answered. "FBI protective custody, standard procedure for family members of compromised operators." Harrington's expression darkened. "If Caldwell has access to FBI protocols, that safe house is already compromised." "We need to extract him immediately," Kramer agreed, "before Caldwell realizes his value." "I'll take a team," Coleman volunteered. 4 operators, low profile. We can be in Arlington in 90 minutes. As they began planning the extraction, Sarah moved to a window overlooking the training grounds of Site Echo. In the distance, she could see obstacle courses weathered by decades of use, the proving grounds where women like her mother had shattered barriers and defied expectations. For 5 years, she had defended her mother against whispers and accusations, insisting on a truth she couldn't prove. Now vindication had come at a terrible price, placing her at the center of a conspiracy that had claimed 7 lives and threatened everyone she loved. A movement in her peripheral vision drew her attention. Agent Alvarez approached, offering a bottle of water and energy bar. "You should eat something," the agent advised. "It's been a long day, and it's going to get longer." Sarah accepted the offerings gratefully, suddenly aware of her exhaustion and hunger. "Thank you." Alvarez studied her with a professional's eye. "You're handling this remarkably well for someone who just discovered their mother is an elite special operator being hunted by assassins." "I always knew she was special," Sarah replied. "I just didn't know how." "She spoke about you," Alvarez revealed, "when I was assigned to liaison with Athena 3 years ago. Not often operational security, but when she did, it was always with pride." The simple statement eased something in Sarah's chest, a knot of doubt she hadn't realized she still carried. "She didn't forget us." "Never," Alvarez confirmed. Everything she did was to protect you and your father. Their conversation was interrupted by Coleman's return, his expression grave. We have a problem, he announced. Arlington's safe house just reported a security breach. Professor Mitchell's transport never arrived. Harrington moved swiftly to the tactical display. Last known position, Interstate 66, 30 miles west of D.C. FBI escort reported routine progress 15 minutes ago, then went silent. Sarah felt her world tilting again, her father now potentially in the hands of the same people hunting her mother. Could it be a communications issue? Kramer suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it. Negative, Coleman replied. Highway patrol found the vehicles abandoned. Signs of a tactical assault, professional, precise. No bodies but blood at the scene. They took him alive, Harrington concluded, which means they want something from him. The Siberia contingency, Sarah whispered. If my father designed the communication protocols, he would know how to access the secondary network. Alvarez's phone chimed with an encrypted alert. Her expression tightened as she read the message. Sir, we've got confirmation. Arlington safe house is compromised. 2 FBI agents down. Tactical team found evidence of advanced surveillance equipment installed within the facility. How long has it been there? Harrington demanded. Based on preliminary assessment, at least 3 months. The implications settled like ice in Sarah's veins. The betrayal ran deeper and longer than anyone had suspected. This isn't just Caldwell, she realized aloud. This is systematic. Someone's been planning this for months, maybe years. Harrington nodded grimly. He's not working alone. He's part of something bigger. The facility's alert system suddenly activated proximity sensors detecting movement in the surrounding forest. Perimeter breach north quadrant, reported a security specialist. Multiple contacts approaching through the tree line. Coleman moved to a weapons locker, retrieving a compact M4 carbine with practiced efficiency. How many? At least 8 signatures moving in tactical formation. Professional operators. Harrington turned to Kramer. Evacuation protocol. Get the girl to the secondary facility. I'm not leaving, Sarah protested. My mother is coming here. My father is missing. And neither will matter if you're captured or killed. Harrington countered his tone, leaving no room for argument. Your mother spent 5 years protecting you. Don't waste her sacrifice. As security personnel moved to defensive positions, Alvarez guided Sarah toward the rear exit. Through windows, she could see operators taking cover weapons trained on the surrounding forest. How did they find us so quickly? Sarah asked as they hurried down a corridor. That's what worries me, Alvarez replied. Site echo isn't on any official records. The only people who know about it are cleared at the highest levels. They reached a concealed garage where a single unmarked SUV waited, engine running. Kramer was already inside, coordinating with someone on a secure line. Where are we going? Sarah asked as Alvarez urged her into the vehicle. Secondary safe house, Kramer replied. An old SEAL training facility in the mountains. 20 miles from here, completely off-grid. As they pulled away, Sarah looked back at the facility that had briefly represented hope, now transformed into a battlefield. In the distance, she heard the first exchanges of gunfire, the sharp, disciplined bursts of professionals engaging in lethal combat. Her mother was flying into this. Her father was missing. And someone with access to America's most classified secrets was orchestrating it all. The SUV accelerated down a concealed forest road, branches scraping against reinforced windows. Sarah stared at the satellite phone in Kramer's hand, willing it to ring with news of her mother's safe arrival or her father's recovery. Instead, it remained silent as they fled deeper into the Blue Ridge Mountains, pursued by enemies whose reach seemed to extend into the heart of America's most secure institutions. In the distance behind them, black smoke began to rise above the tree line, site echo under attack. The safe house that wasn't safe. The secret facility that someone had found. We have a mole, Sarah said quietly, the realization crystallizing in her mind. Someone besides Caldwell. Kramer's grim expression confirmed her assessment. So it would appear. The vehicle rounded a bend, revealing a breathtaking view of endless mountain ridges fading into the distance, a landscape that had witnessed centuries of American history, from Cherokee settlements to Civil War battles to classified Cold War operations. Now it witnessed their flight, a 16-year-old girl and 2 intelligence officials running from a conspiracy whose tentacles reached into the highest echelons of military command. If we can't trust official channels, Sarah asked, how will my mother find us? Alvarez exchanged glances with Kramer before answering. That's where your father's work becomes essential. The Siberia contingency was designed for exactly this scenario when all official systems are compromised. But they have my father. Sarah pointed out, fear for him tightening her chest. They have him, Kramer acknowledged, but they don't have you. Sarah frowned. What do you mean, Sven? The Siberia system requires 2 keys, he explained. Your father designed the encryption protocol, but your mother insisted on a failsafe, a second key entrusted to someone who would never be in the same location as the primary user. Understanding dawned slowly. Me, Sarah whispered. I'm the second key. You're the contingency, Alvarez confirmed. Your mother made sure you had everything needed to activate the system if both she and your father were compromised. Sarah's mind raced, searching for a memory that would confirm this. But she never gave me anything like that. No codes, no special instructions. It wouldn't be obvious, Kramer said. That would defeat the purpose. It would be something only you would recognize, something that would seem innocent to anyone else. The SUV slowed as they approached what appeared to be an abandoned fire road blocked by a fallen tree. Alvarez tensed hand moving to her sidearm. Roadblock, she warned. Could be natural, could be. Her assessment was cut short as the windshield exploded inward, riddled with bullets from concealed positions on either side of the road. The driver slumped forward, dead instantly from a headshot. Ambush, Kramer shouted, dragging Sarah down below window level as bullets continued to tear through the vehicle's armor. Through the shattered windshield that Sarah glimpsed movement in the trees, tactical operators in unmarked black gear moving with military precision to surround the disabled vehicle. Back door, Alvarez commanded, returning fire through her window to provide cover. Sarah scrambled toward the rear of the SUV, Kramer beside her. They tumbled out onto the gravel road as Alvarez continued to engage the attackers from inside the vehicle. Run, Kramer ordered, pushing Sarah toward the dense forest. 20 degrees east, half a mile. There's a ranger station. Get there and use the radio. Emergency frequency is 343.7. What about you? Sarah protested. We'll cover your retreat, he insisted, drawing a compact sidearm. Your mother didn't spend 5 years protecting you for nothing. Go. Sarah hesitated only a moment before turning and sprinting into the forest, the sounds of gunfire fading behind her. The tactical training her mother had given her years ago returned instinctively, moving from cover to cover, minimizing exposure, selecting paths that would hide her tracks. Behind her, the gunfire intensified, then abruptly ceased. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the chaos that had preceded it. She continued moving east, using the position of the sun to guide her as her mother had taught her during weekend camping trips that she now realized had been survival training in disguise. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent adrenaline surging through her system. After 20 minutes of careful movement, Sarah paused to catch her breath and assess her situation. She was alone in the wilderness, pursued by professional killers, with no way to contact her mother or locate her father. The people sent to protect her were likely dead or captured. Yet amid the fear and uncertainty, something else was emerging, a clarity of purpose her mother had prepared her for without her knowing it. All those years of training, disguised as games, all those lessons in observation and tactics presented as mother-daughter bonding. Catherine Mitchell had been preparing her daughter for this moment, a moment when Sarah would need to rely on herself. A twig snapped in the distance. Sarah froze, listening intently. Deliberate footsteps, someone tracking her, moving with the measured pace of a hunter who knows their prey is nearby. She needed to keep moving to reach the ranger station Kramer had mentioned. But first she needed to throw off her pursuers. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. When pursued, change the dynamic. Become the hunter instead of the hunted. Sarah took a deep breath, calming her chasing heart. Then with deliberate focus, she began implementing the evasion techniques her mother had taught her years ago. Techniques she had never imagined she would need to use for real. The hunter in the forest had no way of knowing that the teenage girl he pursued had been trained by one of America's most elite covert operators, a woman who had ensured her daughter would never be helpless, even if the worst should come to pass. Sarah moved deeper into the forest, a new determination hardening within her. She would reach the ranger station. She would contact her mother. And somehow she would find the key to the Siberia contingency, the system designed for the darkest scenario imaginable. a scenario that was now unfolding around her. Twilight descended on the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the ancient ridgelines in deepening shades of purple and blue. The forest, once merely scenery for tourists and hikers, had transformed into a tactical battleground, where shadows concealed both predator and prey. Sarah Mitchell moved through the undergrowth with deliberate precision, each step placed to minimize sound. Her mother's training echoed in her mind, lessons disguised as games during weekend camping trips that now revealed their true purpose. The evening air carried a chill that penetrated her MIT sweatshirt, a reminder of the comfortable academic life that seemed a lifetime away, despite being only hours in the past. The ranger station appeared through the trees, a small wooden structure perched on the edge of a clearing, its windows dark. Sarah approached cautiously, using the twilight shadows for cover, as she circled the building, checking for signs of surveillance or ambush. The structure appeared untouched, undisturbed by the violence unfolding elsewhere in these mountains. After confirming the immediate area was clear, Sarah moved to a rear window. Her mother's voice guided her memory. Always have multiple entry points. Never use the obvious door. Using a rock, she carefully broke the glass, cleared the shards, and slipped inside. The interior was spare and functional, a desk with an old landline telephone trail maps covering one wall, and most importantly, an emergency radio system mounted beside a weather station. Sarah moved directly to the radio, her fingers finding the controls in the gathering darkness. She powered up the unit and adjusted the frequency to 343.7, as Kramer had instructed. "This is Sierra Mike," she transmitted, using her initials as a call sign, requesting emergency contact on Athena protocols. Over. The radio emitted only static in response. Sarah repeated the call 3 times, adjusting the signal strength, but received no reply. Either no one was monitoring the frequency, or those who should have been were unable to respond. A sudden realization struck her. If Caldwell had access to Ghost Protocol files, he would know about standard emergency frequencies as well. Her transmission might have just revealed her location to the wrong people. Sarah powered down the radio quickly and moved to the window, scanning the tree line for movement. Nothing yet, but instinct told her time was limited. She needed to move again, find another way to make contact. As she prepared to leave, her eyes fell on an old topographic map pinned to the wall, a detailed survey of the Blue Ridge region. Something about it triggered a memory, a conversation with her mother years ago. "If we ever get separated hiking," Catherine had told her while tracing routes on a similar map, "remember that high ground gives you 2 advantages, visibility and signal range." Sarah studied the map quickly, identifying the highest peak within reasonable distance. Bear Mountain, elevation 682 feet, approximately 3 miles northeast of her current position. The terrain would be challenging in the dark, but the summit might provide the vantage point and signal clarity she needed. She searched the ranger station for supplies, gathering a flashlight, a first aid kit, and a canteen of water. In a locked drawer that yielded to firm pressure, she found a compact hunting knife, not ideal but better than nothing for self-defense or survival. As Sarah prepared to depart, headlights swept across the front of the ranger station. She dropped instantly to the floor, crawling to a position that allowed her to see the approaching vehicle without being seen. A black SUV similar to those used by the tactical team that had ambushed them earlier pulled to a stop 50 yards from the building. 4 men in tactical gear emerged, weapons ready. "Building should be clear," one said, his voice carrying in the evening stillness. "But approach with caution. The girl has had some training." "How much trouble can a 16-year-old be?" another replied with dismissive confidence. "Her mother is Catherine Mitchell," the first man countered. "Assume nothing." Sarah's chest tightened with a complex mixture of fear and pride. These men, professional operators, were treating her as a legitimate threat because of who her mother was. The validation was bittersweet given the circumstances. She needed to move immediately. The rear window offered her best escape route, but the moment she exited, she would be exposed. She needed a diversion. Sarah's eyes fell on the emergency flare gun mounted beside the fire extinguisher. Her father's voice joined her mother's in her memory, Professor Mitchell explaining the chemical composition of signal flares during one of his enthusiastic science lessons at the kitchen table. Moving silently, Sarah retrieved the flare gun and loaded it with a cartridge from the emergency kit. She took aim at the far side of the clearing, away from her planned escape route, and fired. The flare arced through the darkness, illuminating the forest in harsh red light as it landed among dry leaves hundreds of yards from the station. Contact, one of the men shouted as they all turned toward the sudden light in the small fire beginning to spread. Sarah used their momentary distraction to slip out the rear window and into the sheltering darkness of the forest. Esau. Behind her, she heard the tactical team dividing, some moving toward the flare, while others approached the ranger station. She ran using the techniques her mother had taught her, moving from cover to cover, changing direction, frequently using natural features to break line of sight. The rising moon provided just enough light to navigate without the flashlight, which would have revealed her position. After 20 minutes of evasion, Sarah paused to catch her breath and orient herself. The distant shouts of her pursuers had faded, but she couldn't afford to assume she'd lost them. Skilled trackers could follow her trail even in the dark. She aligned herself with the North Star and began moving toward Bear Mountain, its silhouette visible against the night sky. The climb would be challenging, but the peak represented her best hope for communication and surveillance. As she ascended through increasingly rocky terrain, Sarah's mind worked furiously to piece together the fragmented information she'd gathered. The Athena Protocol, her mother's classified unit of female special operators. The Siberia Contingency, some kind of secure communication system designed by her father. And herself as the second key, though she still had no idea what that meant or how she was supposed to activate it. 2 hours of steady climbing brought her to a ridge just below the summit of Bear Mountain. The exertion had warmed her despite the mountain chill, but exhaustion was beginning to take its toll. She hadn't slept in nearly 24 hours, and the emotional and physical demands of the day were catching up with her. From her elevated position, Sarah could see for miles across the darkened landscape. In the distance, a faint orange glow marked what she presumed was site echo still burning from the attack. Closer, perhaps 2 miles away, she spotted moving lights vehicles traversing the forest roads. The search for her continued. At the summit, Sarah found a small observation platform constructed for hikers. It offered some shelter from the wind and a clear view in all directions. She retrieved the radio from her pack and powered it up, hoping the elevation would improve transmission. "This is Sierra Mike requesting emergency contact on Athena protocols." "Over." Static answered her again, but this time beneath the white noise she detected something, a faint pattern of tones, almost imperceptible. Sarah adjusted the frequency minutely, trying to clarify the signal. "This is Sierra Mike. Anyone monitoring this frequency, please respond. Over." The tones grew slightly stronger, a repeating pattern that seemed deliberate rather than random interference. Sarah realized it wasn't voice communication, but some kind of coded signal. Her mother had taught her Morse code years ago, another game that now revealed its purpose. Sarah listened carefully, translating the pattern in her mind. QRST, 4 letters repeating. It wasn't a message, it was a prompt. Someone was waiting for a specific response. Sarah thought back to her childhood, to the codes and signals her mother had taught her. QRST was the middle section of the alphabet letters, 17 through 20. The numbers triggered another memory. On her 11th birthday, her father had given her a special necklace, a silver pendant with a pattern that Catherine had said represented their family. Sarah had worn it every day until it had broken during swim practice 3 years ago. When her mother disappeared, she had kept the pieces in her jewelry box, a tangible connection to the woman who seemed lost to her. The pendant's design had featured a sequence of dots and lines that, at the time, Sarah had assumed was merely decorative. Now she recognized it as a numeric code, 171985. Using the radio's keypad, Sarah input the sequence as a response to the repeating tones. The static cleared instantly, replaced by a clear voice transmission. "Authentication accepted. Secure channel established. Please identify." Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she keyed the microphone. "This is Sarah Mitchell, daughter of Catherine Mitchell. I need emergency extraction." A pause, then. "Verification question. What was your mother's call sign during Operation Black Sand?" Sarah froze. She had no idea what Operation Black Sand was, let alone her mother's call sign. This was information she couldn't possibly know. Unless another memory surfaced, her mother telling bedtime stories about a female warrior named Athena's Shadow, who moved unseen through dangerous lands. At the time, Sarah had thought they were simply empowering tales invented for a young girl. Now she recognized them for what they were, carefully disguised fragments of truth. "Athena's Shadow," she responded, hoping her intuition was correct. Another pause, longer this time. Then, Verification confirmed. Stand by for extraction coordinates. Relief flooded through Sarah quickly, followed by renewed vigilance. She had established contact, but she was still exposed on the mountaintop with hostile forces in the area. The radio crackled again. Sierra Mike transmitting extraction coordinates now. Can you confirm your current position? Bear Mountain Summit, Blue Badge, Range, Bishkaya. I have visual on multiple hostile vehicles approximately 2 miles southwest. Understood. Extraction team is inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Marking your position with infrared beacon will assist. Do you have access to IR capabilities? Sarah checked the emergency kit she'd taken from the ranger station. Negative, no IR equipment. Understood. Alternate method. Can you create a small controlled signal fire? 3 short bursts of flame spaced exactly 30 seconds apart. Sarah surveyed her resources. The emergency kit contained waterproof matches and chemical fire starters intended for wilderness survival. Affirmative. I can create fire signals. Proceed with caution. Hostiles may have night vision capabilities. Recommend position at least 50 meters from your current location to avoid compromising your hiding place. Understood. Proceeding now. Sarah gathered the necessary materials and moved away from the observation platform, finding a small clearing where visibility from below would be limited, but aircraft above could spot the signal. Using dry leaves and the chemical fire starter, she prepared 3 small piles each designed to burn quickly and intensely. After checking her watch, she ignited the first pile. The flames leapt immediately, casting dancing shadows across the rocky ground. 30 seconds later, she lit the second, then the third, after another precise interval. As the final flames died down, Sarah heard the distinctive whoomp, whoomp, whoomp of helicopter rotors approaching rapidly from the east. Unlike the unmarked helicopter that had pursued them from Chicago, this aircraft operated without lights, moving like a phantom through the night sky. The radio crackled once more. Sierra Mike, we have visual on your position. Extraction team inbound. Prepare for fast rope deployment. Fine, cover and stand by. Sarah retreated to the tree line as the helicopter, a military MH-6 Little Bird she now recognized, appeared over the ridge. The compact special operations aircraft hovered 50 feet above the clearing, its dark form barely visible against the night sky. From the helicopter, 2 figures descended rapidly on ropes, dropping to the ground with practiced efficiency. They moved immediately to defensive positions, scanning the surroundings with night vision equipment. Their movements were fluid, precise, the unmistakable choreography of elite operators. One of the figures detached from security position and approached Sarah's location with uncanny accuracy, as if they knew exactly where she would seek cover. Sierra Mike, a female voice called quietly. Here, Sarah replied, emerging cautiously from the trees. The operator lowered her night vision goggles, revealing a face that, despite the tactical gear and camouflage paint, Sarah recognized instantly. Mom, she whispered, her voice catching. Catherine Mitchell's eyes, so like her daughter's, softened momentarily with emotion before professionalism reasserted itself. Are you injured? Sarah shook her head, fighting back tears. No, I'm okay. Catherine nodded briskly, though her hand lingered a moment on Sarah's shoulder, the closest thing to an embrace that operational circumstances would allow. Extraction in 90 seconds, she said, her voice steady. Stay close to me. Don't stop for anything. The second operator approached a woman with close-cropped blonde hair visible beneath her tactical helmet. Perimeter secure, but we've got vehicle movement on the access road. 2 minutes out max. Copy that, Riker, Catherine acknowledged. Prep for immediate exfil. She turned back to Sarah. When we reach the helicopter, strap in immediately. We'll have a hot extraction. Even in the midst of danger, Sarah couldn't help but study her mother, the woman who had haunted her thoughts for 5 years. Catherine Mitchell moved with the controlled precision of someone who had spent decades honing her body into an instrument of war. New lines marked her face, a fresh scar ran along her jawline, and premature gray streaked her dark hair. But beneath these changes was the mother Sarah remembered, the woman who had taught her to be strong, resourceful, and brave. The helicopter descended lower, hovering just 20 feet above the clearing. Catherine led Sarah forward at a crouching run, Riker covering their movement from behind. As they reached the aircraft, Catherine boosted Sarah up to the open cabin door, where another operator helped her inside. Hostiles approaching from the south, came a warning through the radio. Multiple vehicles heavily armed. All elements immediate extract, Catherine ordered, climbing aboard after Sarah. Dust off, dust off, dust off. The little bird's engines whined as it surged upward, banking sharply away from the approaching threat. Sarah glimpsed muzzle flashes in the darkness below as hostile forces opened fire, but the helicopter was already accelerating beyond effective range. Inside the cramped cabin, Sarah found herself surrounded by four operators in full tactical gear, women all moving with the synchronized efficiency that comes only from years of working together in life or death situations. Despite the helicopter's violent, evasive maneuvers, they continued checking equipment and monitoring communications as if they were merely riding a slightly bumpy bus. Catherine secured herself in the seat beside Sarah, removing her helmet to better hear over the roar of the engines. Her eyes never stopped scanning, watching the tactical display, monitoring the terrain below, checking her team. The hypervigilance of someone who had survived but never allowing herself to fully relax. Admiral Harrington, Sarah asked, having to shout over the noise. Catherine's expression tightened. Site echo was compromised. Harrington and Coleman mounted a defense while Kramer and Alvarez evacuated with you. When you didn't arrive at the secondary rendezvous, we deployed immediately. Caldwell is the mole, Sarah said. We saw footage of him accessing Ghost protocol files during the evacuation. Catherine nodded grimly. We suspected as much when our primary extraction routes were compromised, but he's not working alone. The operation against us is too sophisticated, too well-resourced for a single rogue officer. Who then? We have a theory, Catherine replied, but first we need to reach secure territory. The extraction team for your father is already deployed. Sarah's heart leapt. You know where Dad is? A tight smile appeared on Catherine's face, the expression of someone who had planned for contingencies within contingencies. We've been monitoring your father since I went dark 5 years ago. When his FBI escort was ambushed, we tracked the hostiles to a private estate in the Shenandoah Valley. Extraction team is en route. The helicopter banked again, following the contours of the mountains to minimize its radar profile. Through the window, Sarah could see the first hints of dawn lightening the eastern horizon, a new day emerging after the longest night of her life. Where are we going? She asked. Home, Catherine answered, the word carrying weight beyond its simple meaning. 40 minutes later, the little bird descended toward what appeared to be an abandoned farm nestled in a remote valley. As they approached, sections of the main barn's roof retracted, revealing a concealed helipad. The aircraft settled gently onto the platform, which immediately began lowering into the structure. Welcome to Safe House Artemis, Catherine said as the rotor wash died down. One of only 3 facilities never entered into official records. The platform came to rest in what appeared to be an underground hangar. Unlike the rustic exterior of the barn, the interior was state-of-the-art, a fully equipped operations center with advanced communications arrays, weapons lockers, and medical facilities. This way, Catherine directed, leading Sarah toward a briefing room where several operators were already reviewing tactical displays and satellite imagery. Status report, Catherine ordered as they entered. A woman in her 40s with a communications headset looked up from her station. Extraction Team Bravo has reached the target location. Perimeter security neutralized. They're proceeding to the main structure now. Live feed. Coming online now, Commander. The main screen activated, showing helmet camera footage from an operator moving through what appeared to be an elegant country estate. The night vision imagery gave everything a ghostly green glow as the team methodically cleared rooms, encountering minimal resistance. Caldwell anticipated a direct assault on his primary location, Catherine explained to Sarah. He's concentrated his forces there. This is his secondary safe house where he's holding your father. Sarah watched tensely as the extraction team reached a secured door in the basement level. An operator placed breaching charges while others took position for entry. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The door blew inward. Operators flowed through the opening with practiced precision weapons, scanning for threats. The lead operator's camera showed a sparsely furnished room containing a single occupant, a man tied to a chair, head slumped forward. Target acquired, came the report. Area secure. The team medic moved to the prisoner, checking vital signs. He's alive, appears sedated but stable. Sarah recognized her father despite the poor quality of the video feed. Professor Robert Mitchell looked thinner than she remembered, his face gaunt with exhaustion, his academic's physique diminished by 5 years of depression and alcoholism. but he was alive. Extraction proceeding, the team leader reported. ETA to Artemis 40 minutes. Catherine squeezed Sarah's shoulder gently, a rare display of emotion from a woman trained to compartmentalize feelings that might compromise operational effectiveness. "He'll be fine," she assured her daughter. "Our medical team is standing by." As the extraction team withdrew with Robert Mitchell, Catherine led Sarah to a more private room, a small office with secure communications equipment and a wall of monitors displaying security feeds from around the compound. For the first time since their reunion on the mountaintop, they were truly alone. The professional operator facade slipped slightly as Catherine studied her daughter's face. "You've grown," she said softly. 5 years. 5 years of not knowing if you were alive or dead," Sarah replied, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. 5 years of defending you to people who thought you'd abandoned us." Catherine's composed expression cracked, revealing the pain beneath. "It was the hardest decision I've ever made," she'd admitted. "Harder than any mission, any combat situation." "Why?" Sarah demanded. "Why not just tell us something, anything, instead of disappearing?" Catherine moved to a secure terminal, entering a complex series of authentication codes. The screen displayed classified mission files with the highest security designations. "In 2018, I was assigned to investigate potential security breaches within the Athena program," she explained. "Female operators from the original teams were reporting suspicious surveillance, unusual digital intrusions into their personal accounts." Catherine pulled up surveillance photos, the same ones Alvarez had shown Sarah earlier. "These were taken outside our home in Cambridge 2 weeks before I disappeared. Professional surveillance team with equipment that cost more than our house. They were watching you, Sarah. Watching your father." The implications settled heavily on Sarah. "They were using us to get to you." Catherine nodded grimly. "Exactly. When I reported this up the chain of command, I received orders to continue the investigation covertly. But 48 hours later, an attempt was made on my life in Norfolk." "The night before you disappeared," Sarah recalled. "Yes, the attack pattern indicated insider knowledge. They knew my extraction routes, my safe houses, my protocols. Someone with access to Ghost Protocol had betrayed us." "Caldwell," Sarah said. "We suspected him, but it couldn't prove it. The breach went deeper than just one officer, no matter how senior." Catherine's expression hardened. "When I realized the extent of the compromise, I had two choices: remain with my family and risk your lives, or disappear completely and draw the threat away from you." "But 5 years, Mom," Sarah pressed. "Why so long?" "Because what I discovered was bigger than we initially thought." Catherine displayed new files, classified intelligence reports, surveillance photos, financial transactions. The Athena operators weren't being targeted randomly. They were being hunted because of what they witnessed during Operation Cerberus in 1989. Sarah recognized the operation name from Harrington's briefing: the Soviet bioweapons facility in Kazakhstan. Catherine looked impressed despite herself. "They've told you that much already?" "Yes, officially the mission was to gather intelligence on Soviet biological weapons programs. But what they found was evidence of something called Project Thanatos." The name sent a chill through Sarah. "The same code name they're using now." "Because it's the same operation continued across decades," Catherine confirmed. "The Soviet scientists weren't just developing biological weapons, they were experimenting with chemical compounds designed to enhance human performance. Super soldiers, essentially." "Like Captain America?" Sarah asked skeptically. A ghost of a smile touched Catherine's lips. "Not quite that dramatic, but significant enhancements to strength, endurance, pain tolerance, and cognitive function. The program was officially shut down when the Soviet Union collapsed, but the research didn't stop, it went private." Catherine displayed photographs of elegant men in expensive suits, Russian oligarchs at high society functions. Former KGB and GRU officers who became billionaires in the post-Soviet chaos. They took the research and continued it through private corporations. Pharmaceutical companies, military contractors, specialized clinics for executive health optimization. What does this have to do with Caldwell or with us? Because 20 years ago, these same people approached certain individuals within the U.S. military and intelligence community, Catherine explained. They offered access to their enhancement programs in exchange for protection and expansion into Western markets. The revelation struck Sarah with its magnitude. American officials are taking these enhancements, Our own military. A small but influential group, Catherine confirmed. Mostly older officers nearing retirement worried about losing their edge, their relevance. The treatments worked extending their physical capabilities, their cognitive function, but there were side effects they didn't anticipate. What kind of side effects? Psychological changes. Increased aggression, paranoia, diminished empathy. Catherine's expression was grim. And as these officers rose to positions of greater power, they brought others into the program. They began to see themselves as superior, the only ones fit to make decisions for national security. A cabal within our own military, Sarah whispered, the implications staggering. Exactly. We call them Thanatos Group. For years, they operated in the shadows, placing loyalists in key positions, eliminating potential threats. The original Athena operators were among the few people who knew about the program from its inception. When Thanatos Group learned I was investigating them, they decided to eliminate all potential witnesses. A new alert appeared on the security monitors vehicles approaching the compound. Extraction team inbound with your father, Catherine noted, checking the identification codes. They made good time. Sarah struggled to process everything she'd learned. So Caldwell is part of this Thanatos Group, taking these enhancement drugs. We believe so. His physical performance metrics improved dramatically about 6 years ago despite his age. Unusual strength endurance, cognitive test scores off the charts. Catherine's expression darkened. But his psychological evaluations showed concerning patterns if you knew what to look for. And no one noticed. Those who might have noticed were either part of the conspiracy or removed from positions where they could raise alarms. Catherine checked her watch. Your father will be here soon. He can explain the technical aspects better than I can. He helped design the detection protocols. Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise. Dad knew about this. Not everything, but enough. As a consultant on certain classified projects, he developed methods to detect subtle biochemical markers that these enhancements leave in the bloodstream. When I discovered the connection to Athena, I brought him in carefully compartmentalized. That's why you gave me the pendant, Sarah realized. The code was for the Siberia contingency. Catherine nodded, pride evident in her eyes. You were our insurance policy. If both your father and I were compromised, you would be the one person they wouldn't suspect of having access codes. The pendant contained encrypted coordinates for this facility, disguised as a decorative pattern. But I broke it years ago, Sarah said. I know, Catherine replied with a small smile. But you memorized the pattern. I made sure of that. Before Sarah could respond, the security system announced the arrival of the extraction team. Catherine led her quickly to the medical bay, where professionals were already preparing to receive their patient. The facility's elevator delivered the team and their precious cargo moments later. Professor Robert Mitchell was conscious but groggy, his eyes struggling to focus as medics transferred him to an examination table. Vital signs stable, reported the lead medic. Appears to have been administered a combination of sedatives and truth serum compounds. No physical trauma beyond restraint marks. Robert, Catherine said, stepping to his side and taking his hand. Can you hear me? The professor's eyes widened in disbelief. Catherine, he whispered, his voice rough. Is this real? It's real, she assured him. You're safe now. Sarah, he asked urgently. Where's Sarah? I'm here, Dad, Sarah said, moving to his other side. Relief washed over his face as he reached for her hand. Thank God. When they took me, I thought, we're all safe, Catherine assured him. The family is back together. For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to exist simply as a family, reunited husband and wife, father and daughter, connected by love that had endured 5 years of separation and doubt. Sarah felt tears prickling behind her eyes as she watched her parents' hands clasped together, a tableau she had feared she would never witness again. The moment was interrupted by an urgent alert from the command center. Commander Mitchell, called an operator from the doorway. We've got multiple contacts approaching from the north and east. Tactical formation heavily armed. Catherine's expression shifted instantly from wife and mother to combat commander. How many? At least 20 operators supported by armored vehicles. They've deployed signal jamming equipment. Caldwell, Catherine concluded grimly. He's found us. Robert struggled to sit up. They got the Siberia protocols from me, he admitted, shame evident in his voice. I tried to resist the drugs, but No one blames you, Catherine assured him, squeezing his hand before releasing it. Sarah, stay with your father. I need to coordinate our defense. As Catherine strode toward the command center, Sarah remained beside her father, who was already looking more alert as the sedatives wore off. Dad, Mom told me about Thanatos Group, about the enhancement program. Robert nodded wearily. Soviet biomedical research weaponized for private use. Remarkable science, terrifying applications. And Caldwell is part of it. Not just part of it, Robert replied. According to what they said while interrogating me, he's patient zero for the third-generation formula, the most advanced version. This new information sent a chill through Sarah. What does that mean? Enhanced strength, speed, endurance beyond what the earlier versions could achieve. But the psychological side effects are more pronounced too. Increased aggression, decreased empathy, paranoia. The facility's lights flickered as an explosion sounded in the distance. They're targeting our power systems, Robert observed. Standard protocol for assaulting hardened positions. Sarah was struck by how calmly her father assessed the tactical situation. This mild-mannered physics professor who had spent 5 years drowning his sorrows in alcohol, believing his wife had abandoned him. You seem different, she noted. A sad smile crossed his face. Your mother trained me too after she discovered the conspiracy, just in case this day ever came. He squeezed her hand. I'm sorry for the past 5 years, Sarah. The drinking, the depression. Some of it was real grief, but some was calculated. Calculated. We needed Thanatos Group to believe I was broken harmless, a bitter ex-husband with no connection to your mother's work. His expression was apologetic but resolute. It was the only way to keep you safe while your mother gathered evidence against them. Another explosion closer this time shook dust from the ceiling. The lights flickered again before emergency systems engaged. We need to move, Robert said, swinging his legs off the examination table. Though still weak from the drugs, he moved with purpose, gathering his supplies from nearby cabinets. Move where? Sarah asked. We're under attack. To the secure communications center, he replied. Your mother will hold them off as long as possible, but we need to transmit the evidence she's gathered. It's the only way to expose Thanatos Group. Sarah helped her father navigate through corridors now filled with operators preparing defensive positions. The sounds of combat grew closer. Automatic weapons fired the distinctive thump of grenade launchers, the sharp crack of sniper rifles. They reached the communications center, where Catherine was directing the defense, her voice calm and authoritative as she issued orders through her headset. North perimeter breached, reported an operator. Hostiles advancing through sectors 3 and 4. Fall back to secondary positions, Catherine ordered. Initiate Protocol Omega. Buy us 10 minutes. She turned as Sarah and Robert entered, her expression revealing momentary relief before refocusing on the crisis at hand. The evidence package, she said to Robert. Is it ready for transmission? He nodded, moving immediately to a specialized terminal. Everything we've gathered over 5 years, financial records, medical data, communications intercepts, enough to expose the entire Thanatos network. Who are we sending it to, Baya? Sarah asked. Everyone. Kubiyi, Catherine replied grimly. Military Command Intelligence Oversight Committees, trusted journalists, international partners. Once this goes public, Thanatos Group loses their most valuable asset, secrecy. Robert worked swiftly at the terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard with unexpected dexterity for a man who had been drugged hours earlier. Encryption protocols engaged, transmission packages prepared, but we'll need both authentication keys to initiate broadcast. Catherine nodded, removing a small device from her tactical vest and inserting it into the terminal. Primary key active. Sarah, Robert said, turning to his daughter, we need the secondary key, the pattern from your pendant. Understanding dawned as Sarah recalled the sequence, 17-19-85. She entered the numbers into the terminal. Authentication confirmed, announced the system. Siberia protocol activated. Transmission commencing. The screen displayed progress bars as the evidence package began transmitting to hundreds of recipients, simultaneously a digital deadman switch that would expose decades of conspiracy and corruption. An explosion rocked the facility much closer than the previous blasts. The lights failed completely before emergency systems engaged, bathing the room in red emergency lighting. They've breached the main entrance, reported an operator. 3 minutes to enter perimeter. Catherine turned to her family, decision made. You two need to evacuate now. Take the emergency shaft to the surface. There's a vehicle prepared at the rally point half a mile east. We're not leaving you, Sarah insisted. This isn't a discussion. Catherine replied, her tone brooking no argument. The evidence transmission is what matters. Someone needs to ensure it reaches the right people that it's acted upon. Then come with us, Robert urged. Catherine shook her head. Caldwell will pursue with everything he has. Someone needs to delay him. Her expression softened briefly. I've missed 5 years with you both. I won't risk losing you again. The sounds of combat grew louder, closer. The defenders were falling back, executing a fighting retreat to buy time for the transmission and evacuation. Catherine reached out, touching Sarah's face gently. You found me when no one else could. You never stopped believing. Pride shone in her eyes. Now I need you to finish this mission. Before Sarah could protest further, Master Chief Coleman appeared in the doorway, his uniform showing signs of combat. Commander, hostiles have breached the secondary perimeter. Caldwell is leading the assault personally. Catherine nodded, her decision made. Get my family to the evacuation point. I'll hold them here until the transmission completes. Coleman hesitated only briefly before acknowledging the order. Yes, ma'am. Catherine, please, Robert implored. There must be another way. The transmission needs another 8 minutes, she replied, checking the progress indicators. I'll buy you that time. She touched his face gently. Take care of our daughter. The goodbye was brutally brief, a warrior's farewell rather than a family's. Catherine embraced Sarah quickly, fiercely, before stepping back and resuming her commander's bearing. Go, she ordered. That's an order, Professor Mitchell. Robert recognized the tone, one that admitted no argument. With visible anguish, he nodded and took Sarah's arm. Come on, we need to move. Coleman led them through a maintenance corridor toward the emergency evacuation shaft, a narrow tunnel that led to the surface through a series of ladders and platforms. Behind them, the sounds of combat intensified as Catherine and her remaining operators engaged the attacking force. As they reached the evacuation shaft, a massive explosion shook the entire facility. Dust and debris cascaded from the ceiling as emergency lights flickered. They've breached the command center, Coleman observed grimly. Move quickly. Sarah hesitated, looking back toward where her mother was making her stand. After 5 years of separation, to lose her again seemed unbearably cruel. Sarah, her father said gently but firmly, your mother is giving us a chance to finish what she started. We can't waste it. Tears blurring her vision, Sarah began climbing the access ladder behind her father. Coleman followed, securing each section as they ascended. They had climbed perhaps 50 feet when gunfire erupted below them, sharp professional bursts that echoed through the shaft. Coleman pushed them upward more urgently. Keep moving, he ordered. Don't stop for anything. Another 30 feet up, Coleman suddenly grunted in pain. Sarah looked down to see him clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Master Chief, she called. Keep climbing, he commanded through gritted teeth. I'll hold them here. Before either Sarah or Robert could protest, Coleman had positioned himself on the ladder, his sidearm drawn, creating a choke point in the narrow shaft. Go, he shouted. Complete the mission. Robert pulled Sarah upward, understanding as a former military consultant that Coleman was giving them the only chance they had. The veteran SEAL instructor had made his decision, the same one Catherine had made minutes earlier. They reached the surface access point, a concealed hatch that opened into a small equipment shed. As Robert pushed it open, the sounds of gunfire from below intensified, then abruptly ceased. The morning sun greeted them as they emerged into a clearing surrounded by dense forest. In the distance, they could see the barn structure that concealed the facility, now partially damaged from the assault. The rally point is this way, Robert said, orienting himself. Half a mile east. They moved swiftly through the forest, Robert displaying a vitality and purpose that belied his recent captivity and years of apparent decline. Sarah followed, her mind torn between the mission ahead and the mother she had left behind. After 15 minutes of cautious movement, they reached a small clearing where a nondescript SUV waited, keys hidden in a magnetic box beneath the rear bumper, standard special operations procedure for emergency exfiltration. Robert checked the vehicle for tracking devices or explosives before motioning Sarah inside. As he started the engine, his expression was grim but determined. Where are we going? Sarah asked. Washington, he replied. I have contacts in the Pentagon and on Capitol Hill who can act on the evidence if they receive it directly from us, people outside Thanatos Group's influence. As they pulled away, Sarah looked back toward the facility, now marked only by a thin column of smoke rising above the trees. Somewhere beneath that peaceful-looking forest, her mother was fighting for her life against overwhelming odds. "Dad," she said quietly, "do you think she'll make it?" Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Your mother is the most extraordinary person I've ever known. If anyone could survive this, it's her." His voice held equal measures of doubt and hope. "But right now, we honor her by completing the mission." They drove in silence for several miles, taking back roads to avoid potential checkpoints or ambushes. Sarah watched the peaceful Virginia countryside passing outside the window, a serene landscape that seemed impossibly disconnected from the violence they had just escaped. "I still don't understand," she finally said. "Why would Caldwell betray everything? His oath, his country, his fellow SEALs?" Robert sighed heavily. "The enhancement program changes people, Sarah. Not just physically, but psychologically. It warps their perception until they truly believe they're superior, that they alone should determine the course of national security. And Mom spent 5 years gathering evidence against them. Yes, deep cover operations across 4 continents, tracking financial networks, intercepting communications, identifying members of the conspiracy." Pride mingled with sorrow in Robert's voice. "She sacrificed everything to expose them." "Including us," Sarah said softly. Robert reached across to squeeze her hand. "Including her own happiness. That's what made her different from Caldwell and the others. She never lost sight of what truly matters, what she was fighting to protect." As they crested a hill, Robert suddenly tensed, slowing the vehicle. "We've got company." A roadblock had been established on the narrow country road ahead, 2 black SUVs positioned to prevent passage, armed men in tactical gear taking defensive positions. "Caldwell's people?" Sarah asked, fear knotting in her stomach. "Possibly," Robert replied, already turning the vehicle around. "Or local authorities they've co-opted. Either way, we can't risk it." Before they could retreat, another vehicle appeared on the road behind them, a similar black SUV, moving rapidly to cut off their escape. "We're boxed in," Sarah observed, her mother's tactical training and asserting itself through her fear. Robert assessed their options with surprising calm. "Forest to the west offers cover, but we'd be on foot, vulnerable to pursuit." "What about that?" Sarah pointed to a narrow dirt track barely visible among the trees to their east, a logging road or farm access path. Without hesitation, Robert swung the SUV off the main road and onto the rough track, accelerating as much as the uneven surface would allow. Behind them, the pursuing vehicle attempted to follow, but struggled with the terrain falling behind. "Good eye," Robert complimented her. "Your mother taught you well." The track narrowed, further branches scraping against the vehicle as they pushed deeper into the forest. Eventually, it opened onto another country road, this one mercifully clear of roadblocks. "We need to ditch this vehicle," Robert decided. "They'll be looking for it." "How far are we from civilization?" Robert consulted the SUV's navigation system. "Small town about 3 miles ahead. We can find alternative transportation there." As they approached the town, little more than a crossroads with a gas station, diner, and few small businesses. Robert parked behind an abandoned warehouse, concealing the vehicle from casual observation. "We need to blend in," he said, opening a compartment beneath the rear seat that contained civilian clothes, cash, and basic supplies, standard equipment for covert operators requiring rapid identity changes. They quickly changed Robert into jeans and a flannel shirt that made him look like a local farmer, Sarah into clothes that transformed her from tactical escapee to ordinary teenager. The simple disguises were surprisingly effective, altering their silhouettes and overall appearance. "Head for the diner," Robert instructed. "Act casual like we're just passing through. I'll handle transportation." The small town diner was nearly empty, just a few locals enjoying late morning coffee. Sarah took a booth by the window, ordering breakfast she didn't want while watching the street outside for signs of pursuit. 20 minutes later, Robert entered, nodding subtly to indicate all was well. He joined her, keeping his voice low. "There's a bus heading to Richmond in 30 minutes. From there, we can make connections to Washington, less conspicuous than stealing a car." "Will they be watching transportation hubs?" Probably, but they'll focus on airports and major stations first. Small-town bus stops are lower priority. He sipped the coffee the waitress placed before him. By the time they expand their search parameters, we'll be in Washington. Sarah picked at her food mind, still dwelling on the facility they had escaped and the mother who had stayed behind. What happens if we succeed, she asked. If we deliver the evidence and expose Thanatos Group, then your mother's sacrifice will have meant something, as Robert replied. The conspiracy will be revealed. Caldwell and his associates investigated and prosecuted. The enhancement program shut down permanently. And if we fail, Robert's expression turned grim, then Thanatos Group continues to expand its influence. More military and intelligence officials join their ranks. National security decisions increasingly serve their interests rather than the country's. He met her eyes directly. That's why we can't fail Sarah. Too much depends on it. Their conversation was interrupted by breaking news on the diner's television, an emergency broadcast cutting into regular programming. The waitress increased the volume as customers turned to watch. We're receiving reports of a major security incident at multiple federal facilities. The news anchor announced, her expression grave. Sources indicate classified information regarding a rogue military enhancement program has been released to various media outlets and government agencies. The Pentagon has declined comment, but congressional leaders are calling for immediate hearings. Robert and Sarah exchanged glances of cautious hope. The transmission had gone through. Catherine's evidence was reaching its targets. The FBI has confirmed the arrest of several high-ranking military officers. The anchor continued, including Rear Admiral Richard Caldwell, former commander of Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Allegations include conspiracy, treason, and illegal human experimentation. They got him, Sarah whispered. Initial reports suggest these arrests are connected to what insiders are calling the Athena Files, classified documents revealing a decades-long conspiracy within military and intelligence communities. The anchor continued, "We'll bring you updates as this extraordinary story develops." Robert checked his watch. "Bus leaves in 15 minutes. We should go." As they paid their bill and swayed the diner, Sarah felt a curious mixture of triumph and uncertainty. The conspiracy was exposed, Caldwell arrested, yet her mother's fate remained unknown. "What about Mom?" she asked as they walked toward the small bus station. "And Master Chief Coleman?" "Once we reach Washington, I have contacts who can tell us more," Robert assured her, "people who will know what happened at the facility." The ancient bus arrived precisely on schedule, a vehicle that had been traversing the same rural routes for decades, oblivious to national security conspiracies and covert operations. They boarded, finding seats near the rear exit, still mindful of potential threats, despite the encouraging news. As the bus pulled away from the small town, Sarah gazed out the window at the Virginia countryside rolling past. For 5 years, she had defended her mother against those who believed Catherine Mitchell had abandoned her family. Now vindication had come at an unimaginable price. The road ahead remained uncertain. Her mother's fate unknown. The full extent of the conspiracy still unfolding. But for the first time in 5 years, Sarah felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Robert squeezed her hand gently. "Your mother would be proud of you," he said quietly. "You never stopped believing in her, even when everyone else did." "I knew she wouldn't leave us without a reason," Sarah replied. "I just never imagined the reason would be this big." As the bus continued its journey toward Richmond and ultimately Washington, Sarah thought about the pendant her mother had given her years ago. The silver necklace with its encoded pattern hadn't just been a key to a secure facility. It had been a promise. A promise that no matter how far apart they were, no matter what secrets stood between them, they remained connected by something stronger than distance or deception. A family bond that even the most powerful conspiracy couldn't break. 3 days later, Sarah stood beside her father in Arlington National Cemetery, where America's fallen heroes rested beneath pristine white headstones stretching to the horizon. The formal ceremony had concluded hours earlier, a classified memorial service for those who had fallen defending Safe House Artemis, attended by only those with the highest security clearances. Now only Sarah and Robert remained standing before a simple headstone that bore no name, only a date, and the small emblem of the Navy SEAL's trident. "She deserves to have her name on it," Sarah said quietly. "Perhaps someday she will," Robert replied, "when the full story can be told." The Athena Files had shaken the foundations of American military and intelligence communities. Congressional hearings were ongoing. Caldwell and 23 other high-ranking officers had been arrested, along with numerous private military contractors and pharmaceutical executives connected to the enhancement program. The program itself had been shut down, its research secured, but some secrets remained classified, including the existence of female SEAL teams and their decades of operations. The public narrative acknowledged a conspiracy and illegal medical experimentation, but not the full truth about Athena. "Do you think she knew?" Sarah asked. "That it might end this way. She knew the risks," Robert answered, "but she believed the truth was worth fighting for, worth dying for if necessary." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of nearby trees as they stood in silence, honoring not just Catherine Mitchell, but all the Athena operators who had served in shadows, unacknowledged by the country they protected. Admiral Harrington approached slowly from behind them, his artificial hand gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Though still bandaged from wounds received at Site Echo, he had insisted on attending the memorial service. "Miss Mitchell, Professor," he acknowledged, his voice carrying the same graveled quality, though now tinged with unmistakable grief. "I wanted to speak with you privately." Sarah studied the legendary SEAL commander, noting the weight of loss in his bearing. During the memorial service, they had learned that Master Chief Coleman had died defending the evacuation shaft, allowing them to escape while taking multiple hostile operators with him. "About my mother?" Sarah asked quietly. Harrington nodded, his expression carefully controlled. "About her sacrifice, and about her final request." He removed an envelope from his jacket, handing it to Sarah. "She asked that I give you this if circumstances required it." Sarah accepted the envelope with trembling hands, recognizing her mother's handwriting on the front. She opened it carefully, removing a single sheet of paper. The message was brief, written in the direct style of a woman accustomed to operational communications. "Sarah, if you're reading this, I've fallen completing the mission. Don't grieve too long. I made my choice knowing what was at stake, not just for our country, but for you and your father. For 5 years, I've carried the weight of my decision to leave you. It was the hardest choice I've ever made. But seeing the woman you've become, strong, resourceful, unwavering in your beliefs, I know you understood even when others didn't. Remember what I taught you. Strength isn't about physical power, but about standing firm when everything around you gives way. I am so proud of you, my brave girl. Never forget that. All my love. Mom. P.S. Check the coordinates. Some stories don't end the way they first appear." Sarah read the message twice, tears blurring her vision. Then she noticed a sequence of numbers written below the signature latitude and longitude coordinates. "What is this?" she asked, showing the coordinates to her father. Robert studied them, his expression changing from confusion to cautious hope. "These are coordinates in Montana, near Glacier National Park." "What's there?" "I don't know," he admitted, looking to Harrington. Admiral Harrington's face revealed nothing. "That information is above my clearance level, Professor Mitchell. I was only instructed to deliver the letter." But something in his eyes, a glint that might have been satisfaction or perhaps conspiracy, told Sarah there was more to the story than he was acknowledging. "When can we go there?" she asked her father. "As soon as the hearings conclude," Robert replied. "Maybe next week." Sarah folded the letter carefully, placing it in her pocket. The coordinates might mean nothing, a final sentimental message from her mother, perhaps indicating a place with special meaning. Or they might mean everything. For now, it was enough to know that her mother had fought for what she believed in, had protected her family even at the cost of her own happiness, and had never forgotten her promise to return. As they left Arlington's hallowed grounds, Sarah felt a curious sense of peace despite her grief. The truth about Thanatos had been revealed, the conspiracy exposed. Justice was being served, and somewhere in Montana, coordinates waited to be explored, a final mystery from a woman who had lived her life in shadows, fighting battles most would never know about. A woman who had taught her daughter that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in physical power, but in unwavering belief in the truth, even when no one else believes it. 1 week later, Sarah stood beside her father at the edge of a pristine mountain lake in Montana's Glacier National Park. The coordinates from Catherine's letter had led them to this remote location, a small cabin nestled among towering pines on the lakeshore, accessible only by a narrow hiking trail. "This is it," Robert confirmed, checking the GPS coordinates one final time. "This is where she wanted us to come." The cabin appeared ordinary enough, a simple wilderness retreat with a covered porch and smoke curling from the chimney. What wasn't ordinary was the woman who emerged from the front door as they approached. Despite the civilian clothes and the walking cane supporting her injured leg, Sarah recognized her mother instantly. Catherine Mitchell stood on the porch smiling through tears, alive against all odds. "Mom?" Sarah whispered, frozen in disbelief. Catherine nodded, opening her arms. "Come here, sweetheart." Sarah ran the remaining distance, throwing herself into her mother's embrace with such force that Catherine staggered slightly, despite her military strength. Robert followed more slowly, shock and joy warring on his face. "How?" was all he could manage as he reached them. Catherine's arm extended to include him in the embrace, pulling her family close after so many years apart. "Contingency planning," she said simply. "Always have an exit strategy." Later, seated before the cabin's fireplace with mugs of hot chocolate, a family tradition from Sarah's childhood, Catherine explained. There had been a network of tunnels beneath Safe House Artemis, remnants of an old mining operation repurposed for emergency evacuation. While Caldwell's forces had breached the main facility, she and two of her team had retreated through these tunnels after ensuring the evidence transmission was complete. "But the memorial service," Sarah said, "the headstone." "Official cover," Catherine explained. "The world needs to believe I'm dead, at least until the dust settles. Thanatos Group may be exposed, but we still don't know how far their influence extends." "How long will you need to stay hidden?" Robert asked, his hand not having left his wife's since they'd sat down. "Not forever," Catherine promised. "Just until we're sure it's safe. The hearings are bringing more of their network to light every day." She turned to Sarah, pride evident in her eyes. "You did it, you know. You and your father. The evidence reached exactly the right people because of you." "We just finished what you started," Sarah replied. Catherine shook her head. "You did more than that. You believed when no one else did. You never gave up." As the afternoon light began to fade over the mountain lake, the Mitchell family remained together, making plans for a future they had once thought impossible. There would be challenges ahead, security concerns, ongoing investigations, a world still unaware of the full truth. But they would face them together. For Sarah, the journey had come full circle. 5 years of defending her mother against those who believed she had abandoned her family had led to this moment of vindication and reunion. The truth she had insisted upon had been proven right, though in ways far more complex and dangerous than she could have imagined. As darkness fell, stars appearing one by one over the Montana wilderness, Sarah stepped onto the cabin's porch for a moment alone. In the distance, an eagle soared above the lake, free and watchful. Like her mother, Sarah thought. Like the women of Athena. Operating in secret, protecting a nation that would never know their names, making sacrifices few could comprehend. The door opened behind her, and Catherine joined her daughter, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders against the mountain chill. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Sarah nodded, leaning against her mother's shoulder. "I was thinking about what you taught me, about standing firm when everything around you gives way." Catherine smiled, her arm tightening around her daughter. "You did that better than anyone I've ever known." "I had a good teacher," Sarah replied. Above them, the stars continued their ancient patterns across the sky, indifferent to the secrets and conspiracies of the world below. But not indifferent to this moment, a family reunited, a truth vindicated, a daughter who had never stopped believing. Some stories, it seemed, did end the way they were supposed to after all.